We'd like to welcome each and every individual to the Entrepreneurial Awakening Movement, Unleashing Human Potential. And wow, are we in store for an amazing lesson today on awakening ownership, work, and care. And today we're on lesson 2, awakening, seeing like we have never seen before. Give you heads up kind of warning on this. This one could be, I don't know if it's going to be R-rated, but it could be very intense. A lot of emotion, a lot of packed into it. And that's really what awakening is all about, right? And so you've gone through lesson 1. Did it impact you? Was there an awakening moment? Do you have anything in your life that you would dance for? I was going to say, do you have anything in your life you'd die for? Like, you know, when you think about people who have given their life, like, you know, the military and how amazing they are and the freedoms that we have as entrepreneurs, if we're an entrepreneur or an American citizen, like having, you know, the freedoms we have because somebody's willing to give their life for years of my freedom, like how cool is that? Do you and I have anything that we're willing to die for? Do we have anything that we're willing to dance for? To be the shirtless man and be out there kind of making a fool of ourselves and willing to do that. Is there anything in your belief system that you go ahead and say, hey, I'm willing to stand out and be different? You know, most people maybe not. There's a whole bunch of people that will stand with a group and they're like in the crazy dancing man video. They're the last ones to join the dancing because they don't want to be left out. But there's not a lot of shirtless men, the first one that's ready, you know, to go out there and dance. And there's not a lot of first followers. There's just not. And so we've been through the history and the power of quantum thinking. Buckle your seatbelts in because we're in for an awakening moment now. Tom, can you share the Grandpa Chappelle principle? That was when you shared that for the first time, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever it was. That thing changed my life. So can you go ahead and share that story?
Yeah, it was, you know, one of those times when you're younger and you have older people say, you know, let me tell you something that you probably won't like, but I'm going to give you one of those life-changing things. And as a young person, you kind of blow it off. But my grandfather said, you know, he gave me a little book, and he said, you need to write these things down because you may not see the value in what I'm saying now, but at some point in your life, you're going to think back saying, God, I wish I would have, you know, I wish I could remember what he said. And he said, so you need to write these things down when people who are older than you, who have had more experience than you, who have gone through life experiences more than you, you need to write whatever they say down in your book.
And so when I heard that, it just blew me away. My grandfather did not tell me that. My dad didn't tell me that. My mom didn't tell me. And I had amazing grandparents. My grandmother lived until she was 99 years old. Man, I miss her like crazy. My parents both have passed away in the last 4 or 5 years. And I miss them, and they were great. But they never told me this. Nobody's ever in my life, my 3 degrees in business, they didn't teach me this. And so for those that maybe need a translator on it, life lesson, pay attention, life is important. My 21-year-old son so I have 7 kids. Oldest daughter is 32, 6 grandkids. And my 21-year-old son said something to me that probably is one of the top 5 things my kids have ever said to me that just absolutely moved me to tears. And he said, Dad, you just told me this like yesterday. He's like, Dad, I don't think I'm learning the lessons in life that I need to well enough and fast enough. I think I make the same type of mistakes over and over again. Like, I love you, buddy. Like, pay attention. life is important. If you say, oh, I get this, yeah, you don't. Just telling you, you just don't get this. Hopefully throughout this course, you'll go ahead and write down a lot of things, pause it, and say, wow, I need to go ahead and, I need to pay attention to that. So what is awakening? It's learning to see things that others do not see, which gives us the ability to do things that most people think is impossible. If when someone shares something with you, we think or say, I understand that. Oh, I understand that. I get that. We will never have an awakening moment. Like, I get it. No, you don't. You just don't. It is through humility, okay, something that could really be used in today's society a lot, through taking massive ownership, again, something that, society could use, working harder than most people have ever worked, again, something that would be beneficial, and caring in ways we've never dreamed of, which create moments of awakening. It's an epiphany. It's like, oh my gracious, that's wild. And when's the last time you had an awakening? This is really PG. There's things that I could say, having 7 kids, and I'm at the age now where I could talk like that, but because I want young kids to be able to go through it, I won't do that. But think of, when you've really been awakened, like whoa, that was a wild experience. I love that. I want to do that again. I mean, think of that. Like, when's the last time you had that? That's what we're talking about in awakening. And there's 2 things that seem to be, create awakening. One is pain, and the other is pleasure. And pain tends to go ahead and create a lot more awakening than pleasure does. Pleasure is in the moment. You're like, oh my gracious, that's amazing. That was so cool. That felt so cool. That experience was so amazing. Pain tends to go ahead and create awakening over a long period of time. And so this is going to probably seem weird to a lot of people that know me. But Mark, if you say, Mark, how are you doing? It's like I feel like I'm in heaven. I'm in ecstasy. It's like I'm awakening. It's crazy. Like the last, I think it's been 9 weeks. The last 9 weeks have been the most amazing 9 weeks of my life. It's unbelievable, all the cool things that have happened in the last 9 weeks. I mean, you talk about awakening, you're talking about seeing stuff you've never seen before, in the past, the present, and seeing into the future. Oh, absolutely cool. So I'm sure we'll get to that. Entrepreneurs think like this: awakening, ownership, work, and care, but they don't know they know it. Like, what if you ask an entrepreneur, what's the secret to your success? I don't think you'll have any entrepreneur that goes ahead and says, well, it's because I know how to be awakened in an instant. It's not how I know how to take ownership, work, and care. They won't say these 4 things, but that's really what the quantum thinking, connecting the dots, is all about. They don't know how to teach it, though. I don't know. It comes in multiple ways. So it's asking questions, listening, seeing, true intentions, ours and other people. So we often think people hate us when they love us. We think people love us when they hate us. We think people are caring for us when they're really indifferent towards us. We think people care for a group or an organization or a cause, but they're just manipulating that cause. It's like, what are the true intentions? What are mine and what are other people's? That gives us the ability to think differently, that gives us the ability to have capabilities that are just literally mind-numbing, that gives us the ability to internalize things we've never internalized. It gives us the ability to do things that produces the results that we're seeking. So this quantum thinking model is like, it's life-changing in what it's able to do. I mean, it's just really, really cool. And so how do we take this and how do we internalize it, and how do we move through it, the DNA for people, business, and life. And then when we take the internalization, what is the internalization model? Like, if it's going from a surface understanding, I get that. No, you don't get it. You just don't get it. You don't understand what's being said. And so the internalization model is really cool because it takes the questions and it creates an awakening. It helps us to listen, our why and other people's why. It helps us to gain new insights. It helps us to understand intentions and purify our own intentions and realize we're not nearly as caring as what we think we are, or loving. That gives us the ability to have radically different types of thinking, which gives us new capabilities for leverage to do even more things, to change. And when we change radically, we can help other people. It's not about other people changing radically. It's about us doing it internally. That gives us the ability to do. This is the coolest thing from Peter Miles, that leads to failure. Really? Yeah, we get it. Well, what do we get? A new awakening. But the challenge is, in today's society, it doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't seem to be working. So I'm a little rough on, I'm a white male over 50. Had amazing parents, grandparents, I have so much respect for, white males over 50, but I also am very, very hard on them. Sometimes they think I'm too hard on them. And so what is it that we should be getting? We should be getting, I'm not that smart. I'm not that busy. I'm not that good at taking personal ownership. I don't really work all that hard, and I don't really care about people all that much. And when this is built into the very DNA structure of who we are, it's crazy what will happen. And so awakening comes from questions, but questions come from awakening too. When we're awakened, we ask different types of questions, or when we really listen, that creates an awakening, or awakening creates new forms of listening. We can see, or that can create awakening, or awakening can create new see. Same thing with intentions, same thing with thinking, same thing with capabilities, same thing with internalization, same thing with do. We can create new awakening by doing things different than we've done before, or when we get awakened, we do different things. That then leads to a DNA of people, understanding people in the amazing way that we different, doing business in a totally different way. So people are often right, but they're not right in the way that they think they're right. And because people just struggle, all ages, all race, all gender, all ethnic, all religious groups, every group of people seems to have a common thing, and that is a challenge with being humble and thinking we understand it, we've got it figured out. That leads to ownership. That leads to working in a totally different way. It leads to caring in a totally different way. And that connects into the internalization model, connects into awakening. And so you all that are participating, you have permission to interrupt me at any time. I may go ahead and slow down. I'll listen to your energy. I may slow down, or I may just keep going. Tom, any thoughts you have on, you're the one that helped inspire the internalization model. You have actually inspired so much of this. Appreciate your wisdom over the years and investment into my life and my kids' lives. Tom, any thoughts you have?
No, it was interesting when you popped up those questions at the bottom, or statements, I guess it is, at the bottom, that I'm not that smart, I'm not that busy, and so on. Can you kind of walk through that again? I'm not quite sure I got all of that.
Yeah, my poor oldest brother. Are you the oldest, Tom?
I am.
You're probably very thankful you didn't have a younger brother like me. Like my oldest brother, he's a CPA, and the guy is just crazy smart intellectually. But I remember years ago, he and I and one of his best friends, Rob, I think he owned his own construction firm, and we were talking, and Vern said something. My oldest brother said something, bless his soul, about how he's a CPA, and Rob, his best friend, just laughed, mocked him, and said, Vern, we know you're busy and important, buddy, because you're a CPA. And that resonated with me, a lot on how people think they're busy and important. or how they think they're smart. Like the people like John Henderson, he said to me, he's like, Mark, you can learn more from a bad leader than a good one. And he said something, and then he said something else. He said, you know, Mark, it's interesting, like the smartest people like doctors and, you know, CPAs and engineers, the highly educated individuals, they're smart in one area. And he said somehow, I mean, the guy, like John Henderson, amazing guy. He's like, somehow, because they're smart in one area, they think they're smart in every area. And I've met that, like CPAs, they think they're smart with technology, or they think they're smart in business, or medical doctors. Like literally, I don't know if you knew this, Tom, do you know what medical doctors call Cessna airplanes?
No.
Flying coffins. It's one of the great causes of medical doctors. Because, and it's true, they think they're a doctor, so they think they're a good pilot. Well, I'm really smart, so Randy Eicherman went ahead, and he's a CPA, and he said he had a medical doctor that almost crashed and gave up his pilot's license because he said, I'm going to go ahead and die. And so they literally doctors literally call Cessnas, you know, so doctors do pretty well financially, and so they go out and buy these airplanes, and they think they're good pilots because they're good doctors, and they die. So anybody that has a specialization, either people that are highly specialized in an area and people who are highly educated, they think they're smart. It somehow affects their brain, and they think they're smart in all areas.
Well, the reason I asked the question, well,
yeah, go ahead.
I think so, because the reason why I asked the question is I feel all of those things you just said about me.
Well, of course you do. You're a white male over 60. See, this is the thing that's unique about you, Tom.
I'm a white male over 70.
You're a white male over 70. That's even got to get better. Like, wow. So this is the thing that's unique about you. Most people would not be honest and have integrity. And so in a way, Tom, you do feel yourself about all of those things. But in another way, like you're one of the most humble guys I've ever met in my life. So when you disagree with me, you'll always go ahead and say, Mark, you won't, I don't know if I ever remember you saying, well, yeah, almost never will you go ahead and say, I disagree with you, Mark. You'll say, so Mark, why do you say what you're saying? Why are you thinking what you're thinking? And you do that to everybody, and it doesn't matter what their age is. It doesn't matter what their race is. It doesn't matter what their gender is. It doesn't matter what their ethnic or educational background. Like, you go ahead and don't think of yourself as being better than anyone else.
You know really why I say that?
Why is that?
I learned a long time ago that everybody has different views on every single thing. I don't know of any two people that go down the line 100%. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but I say that because I really am interested in finding out how did you come to that assumption? Because I missed something, obviously.
See, and so, Tom, when you say I missed something, obviously, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, a child that's 3, 4, 5 years old. It doesn't matter if it's a teenager. It doesn't matter, again, anything. I've seen you in all kinds of interaction. I've seen you interact with my children over the years. And in every situation, you're seeking to learn before you share anything. And when you share it in a very humble way. So in a way, you do think, yes, you're smart, busy, you take ownership, you work hard, and you care. You do think about you're strong, like you have a lot of confidence, but you have a lot of humility. I mean, it's just it's hard to teach children. It's hard to teach the future generation, something to think about. Opinion is the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. It requires profound purpose larger than the self kind of understanding. Like this is, when my wife shared this with me, I'm like, this is golden. This is amazing at what it is. And so something to be proud of. So again, warning, before I go into that, let's go through the awakening model. So there's 4 quadrants. So awakening is self. So you can be awakened by yourself. And then this quadrant 2 is awakened through yourself and others. 3 is awakened through groups, and 4 is awakened through strangers. And then there's 10 dimensions of awakening. 1 is we're born, and it happens all the time without conscious thought. So again, for men out there, okay, all the men that want to get women excited, okay, I learned how to do that by a 3-year-old boy. I think he was 3 years old, and I was going in and playing basketball at the club, and his mom's holding on to his hand, so young, attractive, woman, and she's walking in holding on to her son's hand, and so he doesn't run out in the street like little 3-year-old boys do, and he's like, "Mom, blue car." Maybe he was 2 years old, probably 2 years old. He's like, "Mom, blue car," and she got so excited, like she's like, "Really? That's so," like she got excited, he got excited. I'm like, really? Here's a 2-year-old kid that knows how to excite women, and grown men don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. So we're born, and so young kids, they're awakened all the time. It's a crazy, like, I have 6 grandkids. It's so awesome. Then me plus one other person, and so it's mom, so I can get mom excited, and then I can get dad excited. And how do I have awakening moments like, oh my gracious, my mom thinks differently? It's so cool to see even my 4-month-old granddaughter. It's so cool to see her studying the difference between her mom and dad, and even her grandpa and grandma. And the 3-year-old granddaughters I have, 2 of them twins, they're masterful at studying other people, and they know exactly what they can get away with each one. It's amazing. And then me and more, so that's our siblings. It's, we go to school, me and a group of people, so that's when we often enter into school or, work. And most people only are awakened at 1 to 5, levels. Most get stuck. It's all self-absorbed. And then the level 6 is going to be others. We have awakening moments on behalf of others, like an awakening moment for my son. Our strangers close, awakening from people we're not connected to. So when I see all this going on in America and all the marches, I'm awakened like crazy. It's awesome. It's like, like I see things I've never seen before. Strangers awakening from people we've never met. And then awakening from the 7.4, actually 7.8 plus billion people in the world. And then level 10 is impacting the world after we leave this physical world. And so how do we think about that? And when you become a grandfather or grandmother, I'm assuming that there are amazing things that happen, in that world. And so what does this mean? Does it apply, does this apply to every area of life? Einstein said you can never solve a problem on the level it was created, meaning we create our own problems, and so we're the solution. Government's not the solution for our problems, not that the government can't improve. I would agree. I think we all, not the big business, not big government, not big religion, education. Like we can solve our own problems. That's an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur says, I don't need a job. I can figure it out. I'll create a job for me and create a job for everybody else. It prevents entitlement. You'll never find an entrepreneur who's entitled. You just won't, because they can't survive. You can't even, have a business owner that's entitled, because they won't survive. They will not survive. I mean, big business maybe, but little business not so much. The Grandpa Boersma principle. So my grandfather, when I was 8 years old, he said this to me once. Nobody ever said it, never read it in a book. Google doesn't even know this. And that is, Mark, when someone shares something with you that you don't want to hear, remember, there's some amount of truth to it. It could be 1% to 99%. It's not up to that person to tell you what percentage of truth there is. It's up to you to take it, internalize it, and decide for yourself what you need to accept and then change. My grandfather died when I was 9. I only saw him 6 times in my life. This change, it takes away all the defensiveness. It gives ownership. It's it's not somebody else's issue. So life lessons, don't be defensive as we won't learn anything. Take ownership. Don't be a drama queen or king, and then change what is needed. It's simple. This is not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. Claim unclaimed territory. Tom, can you share that story?
Sure. When I first went to work for Century 21, I was just a manager coming in, and it took me about one day to figure out there was one guy who had the shining star. Everybody talked about Marty Reuter. So I went to him and set an appointment. He didn't know me from Adam. I go to the appointment, and he looked at me kind of funny. He goes, "Aren't you the new guy?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Why are we here?" I said, "Because you are the shining star in the company, and you seem to be the most successful. I just want to know what you do." And he looked at me like I was nuts and finally realized that I was probably nuts and that I was serious. And he said, "Claim all unclaimed territory." And what he meant by it, I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he told me, he said, "If you see something that needs to be done, just go do it." He said, if somebody leaves or gets fired and they haven't replaced it, take over the responsibility of that job until they put somebody in there or until they end up giving it to you. He said, the thing, you may not ever get the money for it, and you may not ever get the responsibility. But at some point, someday, the leadership of the organization is going to be sitting around the table deciding they need to make changes or come up with a new way of doing things, and they're going to sit there and say, who can we put in to do this? And they're going to say you, because you claimed all unclaimed territory. You didn't wait for people to ask you to do things. You just went and did them. And that's
I love that one.
Territory.
Tom shared that with me. It just blew my mind. Interesting. This isn't like The Secret, pay it forward, oh yeah, you do good things, it'll come back around. That's not that. It's so much more than that. And so we as human beings must trust the integrity of natural laws and must learn to master them. And so in this course, we'll talk about personality mastery as the DNA for people. And when you look at the different things that happen, like the analytic tends to fall into despair, the driver tends to fall into anger, the expressive tends to fall into foolishness, and the amiable tends to fall into fear. And then all these things can happen to the analytic: pride, disassociation, major depression, bipolar. The driver personality: defiant, poor conduct, disruptive, sexual disorders, oppositional, physical abuse. The expressive: narcissism, ADD, ADHD, addictions, explosive drama, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive. Fear for the amiable: panic attacks, passive aggressive, stress, post-traumatic anxiety, social phobias. And so when you look at the core of this, and again, I'm not real confident: big government, big education, big pharma, big media, big medical, big religion. I'm not sure anybody, this is stuff that we can solve. We can figure this out, and then kind of an inner quadrant is BPD, bipolar personality or borderline personality disorder, which is just, whoa, really interesting stuff. And that's where the mobile app comes in. So I appreciate Life Masteries Institute. This is warning where it might get a bit intense, a bit emotional. So this is my son with my granddaughter, Lily, and this is my son who died when he was 39 weeks ago. And let me tell you, you talk about awakening, man, that awakened me in the most craziest way. So there's like I was a pretty intense guy beforehand, pretty driven, pretty focused. Now I'm on fire. And so the pain for the last 9 weeks has been awesome. The awakening, the hurt. I mean, my wife and I cry every day, and we have 6 other children, and they cry. It's like it just absolutely, it's crazy. And so this course is devoted to him. And I've developed hundreds of courses, and I so want this to be like his human being is gone. His spiritual being is still very much, but don't know what all that means. But I'll never go ahead and hug him again. I'll never see his blue eyes. I'll never see. Like, it's crazy. And so, but why it's so cool is this course, like if I had done it sooner, maybe he wouldn't be dead. Like, I get it. And so awakening, like my analytic is on fire. You know, the driver is like on fire, my expressive, my amiable, like all of these things are, you know, just so crazy. And so I worked for over 15 years to save my son and his life, his very life. And I'm so proud of him, the things that he did. Oh my gracious. So I want a movement. Like, I want a movement. I believe he can accomplish more in his death than he did his life. I really do. Like, and so he went ahead, and one of his companies that he owned was video editing and production and everything, and he was contracted with Life Masteries for over 8 years. And so there's been a generous anonymous donor that has given $125,000 to be matched. And so if any of these things resonate with you, alcoholism, kids at risk, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, mental abuse, mental illness, drugs, and other types of addiction, if any of those resonate with you, you know, get on board. I mean, even $5. It's not $5, it's $10. You know, 10,000 is not 10, it's 20,000. If you want to go big, 125,000 is not 125,000, it's 250,000. So whatever you give, like whether it's $1 or whether it's, you know, $100,000, it's all important. So give whatever you can give. It'll be matched up to $125,000. So the goal of Life Masteries is to raise $250,000 to help prevent, you know, some really, really hard things, and then to help people to heal, you know, very quickly. That's Tim. He was, I don't know how old he was then, but he's 19 now, and he was in the room when it happened. And so talk about PTSD, I mean, unbelievable. Ben is now 21, and so I don't know how old he was in the picture, and they adored their older brother, and he was an amazing older brother. And so the Life GPS mobile app is going to go all over the world, and it's going to change people's lives. I believe it's going to prevent so many things that are just a travesty. And it's going to help people who have been through stuff in the most amazing way. If you haven't joined EC2, I'd encourage you to do that. It's only $20 a month, and I'm telling you, the connections that you would have are just absolutely amazing. You'll be assigned an art mentor, and then at some point 2 art buddies, and so you help them, they help you, and together we can accomplish so much more than we ever could on our own. If you haven't taken the Personality Masteries course, do that for sure through Life Masteries. Unbelievable course, life-changing. Another course that's great is Leverage, the Magical Arts of Positive Motivation and Manipulation, and then the Psychology of People. another great course that you can take. And so we're going to go into the Q&A right now here. And so for those that are participating live, we've gone through awakening now. Next is ownership. Phenomenal lesson, just phenomenal lesson. Dive right in to it. And we're going to be learning from Tom also the 5 steps to success. We often say we want something, and we don't get what we want. And it's because we don't know how to want in a way that gets us what we want, and we don't know how to do the things that need to be done to get us what we want. And so we're going to be going through that, and that's going to be lesson 3, which is the next lesson on taking ownership. There'll be a short medium pause here, and then we'll go into the Q&A.